Is it showing up now? Hello and welcome. My name is Asa Anna. Welcome to the ceremony of the first induction of the Poet Laureate of Johnstown. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. It is my privilege to be here with the Honorable Mayor of Johnstown, Frank Janankovich. Mayor, thank you so much for hosting us this afternoon. The agenda of the ceremony is simple. I'm going to recognize the volunteers who donated their time to select the final poems. I will say a few words about the project, and then the mayor will read a proclamation that will note the 3 honorable mentions and then induct the Poet Laureate of Johnstown. I'd like to begin by thanking the committee members who volunteered their time to select the poems. The all-volunteer committee members were Eric Schweer, a poetry professor at the University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown, Catherine Barrett Furnoff, she's a librarian, Penn Highlands Community College, Ashley B. Keel, library director at Highlands Community College, Highland Community Library, and Keisha Ball, communications officer at the Community Foundations of the Alleghenies. They selected the 10 poems of the more than 70 submitted. Ms. Ball, thank you so much for helping with this ceremony today. Poets Jim Daniels from Carnegie Mellon University and Toy Darracott from the University of Pittsburgh volunteered their time to select the final 5 poems as well as the honorable mentions. I can't thank them enough for donating their time, and the O-Neater Book Club for volunteering to make this effort happen. I'm going to say a few words. I have a confession to make. I didn't know the power of poetry could have on a community. Sure, I like poems, but I never had such a deep appreciation for the crafts I do today. I am so amazed by how brave you all are for sharing your poetry for the world to see. To me, it seems so vulnerable that you would put your emotions and feelings out there. Thank you. You are all brave artists and writers. Today, on Election Day, we are here as a sign of solidarity. As our federal government tries to divide us, we are a community of artists and writers that decided otherwise. I've witnessed you all come together in a poetry reading, not knowing who each other were. You sat patiently listening, showing signs of encouragement and care. We created an inclusive community, shared ideas, even as many of us were strangers to each other. But what bonded us was our appreciation for poetry and our care for one another. We won't let legislators divide us, how much they might try. I said this so many times before, but it bears repeating. The most used word in all of the poems was the word love. There is care in our heart for one another, and this important designation has showed us that division doesn't win, love does. The poet William Carlos Williams from the 1950s, he wrote in the 1950s, he wrote, it's hard to read the news in poems because men die every day for what's in them. What Carlos Williams is saying is that the answers are in the poems. The words you wrote tell us about the world and solves things. We learned about Johnstown in so many magical ways and new ways. We learned about love, desire, anguish, war. Returning to Johnstown, your poetry taught me how lovely it is to take the time to dance with someone you deeply care for. The answers are in the poems. There are no winners and losers here today. We celebrate the laureates and look to them to cultivate a thriving poetry community. We support each other and will continue to celebrate poetry in all its magic the way we know how. A couple other additional projects in relationship to this important designation at Art House 6 at 126 Walnut Street, right down the hall from City Hall, right down the road from City Hall. I'm working on a permanent installation where I'm living inside a poem. And people can stay there overnight. I can't wait to show you some of the efforts and poems that you brought to us in our community will be represented in this installation. Most importantly, an anthology of the poems you submitted will be published. The book will be available to the community, and most importantly, it'll be available to our local legislators and leaders, so they will have all the answers that are inside your poems. To conclude, it is my privilege to introduce to you the Honorable Mayor of Johnstown, Frank Janankovich. Mayor, thank you so much for your support in the arts. And into this project, the mayor will read a proclamation and announce the honorable mentions and induct the poet laureates. Mayor.
Thank you very much. At this time, it's my pleasure to read the following proclamation.
Whereas a committee of local poetry enthusiasts, organized by artist Asa Anna, collected submissions from more than 70 Johnstown area residents to, for the first time ever, select and name an official poet laureate of Johnstown. And a committee of 5 people selected poems out of more than 70 submissions. Whereas the all-volunteer committee members were Frederick Schweier, a poetry professor at the University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown, Catherine Barrett Fornoff, librarian, Penn Highlands Community College, Ashley B. Kyle, library director, Highland Community Library, Keisha Ball, communications officer at the Community Foundation for the Alleghenies, and artist Asa Anna, who selected 10 final poems. Whereas the final decision was made with input from nationally accomplished poets Jim Daniels, Carnegie Mellon University, and Toy Derricott, University of Pittsburgh, who volunteered their time to select their final 5 poems. Whereas the OH-NEDER Book Clubs International was instrumental in helping the Poet Laureate of Johnstown, and the most used word in all poems was the word love, and the second most used word was Johnstown. An honorable mention include Milanali QG for her poem titled I Like My Anger, Lyle Ellen, Shall We Dance, and Shannon Foster, It's December 13th. Whereas the process has led to 2 talented poets being selected to represent the city of Johnstown with their words and their work to promote, encourage, and advocate for poetry and writing in the region. And the poet laureates assume a lifetime appointment and must continue to celebrate the genre of poetry by doing more than 4 public readings and cultivating the craft by writing more than 5 poems. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Frank J. Janakovic, Mayor of the City of Johnstown, do hereby proclaim Joyce Robley, author of the poem January, and Mike Gruber, author of the poem The War is Over, as the Poet Laureates of the City of Johnstown, Pennsylvania, from this day forth. Present the following proclamations.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Would they like to speak?
They're going to read their poems.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sure, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you so very much.
First. Hi there, I'm Michael Gruber, and the poem that I wrote for this, I'm going to dedicate to my father. I wrote it when he was diagnosed with cancer, and within 2 weeks, 3 weeks of this poem being written, he then passed on. So, Dad, this goes out to you. Poem's called The War is Over. The sunrise said, "This is any other day." A dozen sparrows, perched in tangles, called out their intentions by name. Clouds sang endless hymns, stretching whispers into silence. Dirty dishes gossiped inside. The fire was somewhere else, and a savior engine screamed. The street sign said to make sure this is the way we're supposed to go. The waiting room said soon. The scale weighed light. The metal bar said to stand tall and moved a little higher. The hospital said God bless you. The crossroad in the countryside merely nodded as we turned. The strip mine frosted in snow asked how long it had been. Somewhere outside, dead leaves rustled in the wake of an evicted family prowling for a new home. The thin sedan, pitted by rust at every seam, said grinding sick steel down to nothing couldn't change a damned thing. Ear pockets popped at high altitude. Glares of sunset flickering through the trees painted 1,000 silhouettes on my face that said, "Pay attention to the road." Thank you.
Very good.
I'm Joyce Robley, and this is my poem, January. I stand on the front porch as my dogs sniff and circle through the snow below. The town sits like a bowl in front of me, steaming with smoke from chimneys, carrying with it the acrid scent of burning coal and the dense aroma of charred wood. A memory rises from the bricked stack of my childhood, mornings like this one, when I rode shotgun with my mother as she hauled wood in the big green dump truck. Its 8-track player delivered Charlie Pride to us. The CB radio offered a connection to the world to my mom. My mother's handle was Lady Woody on those days, and I was her thumb-sucking sidekick who watched the road from a hole in the floorboards the size of a fried egg. The truck threw heat just in time to arrive at the sawmill to load remnants and slabs of wood for home use. I listened as my mom chucked wood into the bed with heavy clangs and thuds, the fecund scent of peeling bark and warm metallic sawdust swirled into the cab where I rested on a felt seat cover with my blanket. My mother's eyes showed the effervescence of physical labor as she took to the road, double clutching her way up narrow Cambrian hills, a hulking benefactor of warmth in January. I recall tree branches clawing at the windows as she brought wood to people who lived away from town, a scratching similar to the sound my dogs make now as they paw at the door and close the damper on my reverie. Puffs of fondness for those days continue to rise up, like the smoke from the chimneys in my town, a town that looks just as it did 40 years ago in January, a bowl with steam rising.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This concludes the ceremony. Congratulations, Mike and Joyce, being the Poet Laureates. You're going to build a wonderful, thriving community for us, and we're going to continue this effort. Please please bring to your attention the website is poetjohnstown.com for updated information about this project. Peace be with you all. Please vote. This concludes the ceremony at this time. Thank you for joining us.